Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's Friday the 23rd of May. We're getting into the middle of the year. I want to make this video. I saw a video with Dr. Laren Thomas and the head of Niagara, Bob Shabala. I guess that's how you pronounce it. And so they were talking about the demise of Crucible Steel. How's that going to affect us as knife users and all these fantastic steels that we've come to enjoy? And so I'm going to talk about that a couple minutes. That's the most up-to-date information. But if you don't care about that, if you're just one of them traditional pocket knife guys, you don't really care at all about super steels, there's still a reason to watch this video. I'm going to pass some information off to you and explain a little bit why you should care too if you're a traditional knife maker. So yeah, I hope you check out this video. As far as I know, it's the most up-to-date information. It's not going to be long or technical. All right, welcome back to the Fortified Castle. Hi to all my viewers. Today we're going to be talking about this Crucible Steel bankruptcy. So I guess we start by explaining, who was Crucible Steel. And Crucible Steel was a steel maker. And so we get these steels. This is an S30V right here. We get these steels from steel makers who mainly make this steel for other industries. And then some of them, like Crucible, was really, really helpful to the knife community and, provided all these fantastic different steels to us, even though it's a fraction. I mean, I'm talking not even 1%, small fraction of their business was in these knife steels. I think that's really important to remember. We kind of, we use these knives and we think we're the world, but we're really not. Most of the steel in the world is produced for other reasons. And so we account for a very, very small percentage of knife steels. So the big question is, will I still be able to get CPM 154? Of course, that's a particle metallurgy steel of 154 cm. And the short answer is yes, maybe. And so a lot of these steels that Crucible produced, and they were the largest producer of these super steels that we use in knife manufacturing today, are going to be available through another means. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's going to be different. And so it's not going to be, you're not going to have quite the variety that we had with Crucible. And so there's a couple manufacturers like Carpenter does this, and I forget the name. There's another manufacturer that works in these particle metallurgy type steels, special process for making this steel. That's where it differs from just forged steel. And so there's a lot of makers of different kinds of forged steel, but only a few that deal in this particle metallurgy. And that's really where the problem comes. So as we talk about Crucible, they are a steel maker. When we talk about Niagara, Niagara is the principal supplier of these high-end and some low-end steels to the knife market in America. And so what is the difference between Crucible and Niagara? So Crucible makes the steel Usually these are ingots or bars, rods that they come in. Niagara takes that steel, processes it into into sheets where the steel could be processed in the knife blades, where they could be punched out into the blade shapes that then end up in these knives here. And so Niagara at one time did make some steel, but now they're called Niagara Specialty Metals, and that's what they do. They take this steel and put it into a format which knife users can use. So Dr. Laren Thomas was interviewing Bob Chabala about what's going to happen at Niagara now that Crucible's not there. So this is the inside, up-to-date information. It's a week old. I wanted to get it out last week, but I didn't get it out. So this is probably the most up-to-date information that you can get. So Crucible's bankrupt. Its assets and intellectual property is being sold. There's not going to be any revival of Crucible again. Crucible was bankrupt twice before. White knights came in. People that came in with money infused it into the company, kept it going. So that's not happening this time. So a company called Era, it's a French steel company that has a worldwide presence, bought mainly the intellectual property to Crucible, which is the names of the steels of Crucible. So when you're talking about S30V, that's a CPM. S30B, CPM stands for Crucible Particle Metallurgy. And so these are intellectual properties. The name is, and the trademark belongs to Crucible. So now Era has that trademark. Now, any company, very few steels are actually trademarked. And so any company can make CPM MagnaCut, for instance, but they can't call it CPM MagnaCut. So we have the formulas for the steel, and you can steel company can use that formula to make that steel, and that's what's happening with Era, the French steel company. So they are going to continue to make some of these steels. Certainly, they'll make MagnaCut, and it'll be called CPM MagnaCut, but it will be a Era steel. So there are other. If you're going to make MagnaCut, you would have to call it something else. You couldn't call it CPM MagnaCut. That's the biggest difference. That happens all around the world already. Bowler M390 was developed by Bowler. So Crucible produced it as 20CV, and Carpenter produced it as CTS 204. So that's kind of what to look for as far as the steels. So before you get all comfortable with that, there's a couple points we need to talk about. So just because Era is a particle metallurgy steel producer, actually more advanced than Crucible. They have third generation processes, and much more technologically advanced than Crucible. Doesn't mean they're going to make all that stuff. So like 15V, Crucible was able to produce 15V because they had the equipment to produce the very high temperatures required to produce 15V. And Era probably is not going to produce 15V, so you're going to see it go away. S35VN, S30, probably going to keep seeing that. S45VN, probably going to keep seeing that. This steel here, M4, maybe not. So Niagara has been in consultation with ERA and Carpenter Steel Company to kind of say, hey, we got a market for the steel. Can you continue to supply us? And they have said yes, but what you're liable to see is some steel's going away, like M4. It's an older steel, and it may not just be available. So a lot of the steels will be available, but not necessarily all of them. So you're definitely going to see a constriction in the type and availability of steels that are available on the market for our consumption. So what if you're this traditional guy? How does it apply to you? Okay, it's a really big wake-up call. So a lot of producers in the United States produce what's called budget steels. Basically, they're just steels that don't have a lot of alloys in them. We call them low alloy, high carbon steels. And so those aren't likely to go away. But the lesson here is that the steel industry doesn't revolve around the knife industry. The knife industry revolves around the steel industry. And so what happened to Crucible is they had a robust business with these steels, 3V, Crewware, all the S steels, robust business. But it's only a fraction of what it takes to run a steel company. Most of it is steels going out to other industries. And so Crucible went under because the industry demand for the steels they were producing were going away. That's the lesson. Can it affect these steels? Absolutely. How could that be? Well, companies around the world are allowed to dump steel into the United States, meaning they're like 30-40% less than what it costs to produce steel in the United States. Now, it doesn't mean they can produce it for cheaper. What it means is they're selling it below cost to gain market share. Once they crush the steel companies, and this is a model that's been used in a lot of industries, once they crush the steel industry, they'll raise the prices on their steel and they'll have domination of that market. And so can that affect, the steel we get and put in these traditional knives? Yeah, absolutely. It's happened in the past. It'll happen again. And it's a danger. And it's one reason why I think the government right now is moving to try to protect the steel industry, because you have to have a steel industry. And if you don't, and you're in a worldwide conflict or an international conflict, and you don't produce steel, you could be in trouble. You can be in trouble. And so there's hope that companies that produce knives like these, the lower end steels, D2, 1095, 1085, 1075, 440, 420, those kind of steels, that it'd be a little more immune than the super steels, but not a lot. Okay. So the steel industry in America has been declining really for 40 years. I live in an area where there are all kinds of steel factories. They're all shut down. And the reason they're shut down is this flood of international steel into the country. Not only steel, aluminum, all kinds of different metals that come into America. And so we're all vulnerable to what happened at Crucible. And short term, will the super steels survive in knife form? Yeah, I think it looks that way. But long term, it's unclear of how that's going to work. And again, that these steels are not easy to make. So they're a time-consuming process for very little profit. Crucible was sensitive to the knife community and wanted to help it. Carpenter produces steels for the knife industry and wants to help it. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to make a profit. And so that's what has to be considered. And, I think there's reason to be concerned about all of this. And I think it is possible, although, like I said, everything looks good now, but it is possible to lose these steels if you're taking advantage of that. And not only that, but even the steels, the more common steels that we see in these traditional pocket knives, can be affected by what's going on in the world. We've allowed the steel industry to decline for 40 years in this country. And not only that, it's not only steel that's being dumped in the country, but it's knives too. And so when you get these, I don't even have one on the table, foreign knives, when you get these foreign knives into the country and they're ridiculously cheap, we love it, right? And we're like, so what? They're cheaper, I'm going to buy it. But the reality is they're not cheaper. They're cheaper because a foreign nation is eating the cost on this, trying to gain market share over an American company. And that's what's really happening. And ultimately, we could lose those companies pretty easily. It's really amazing at the level of foreign knives that come into this country that we can even have a domestic knife a business in this country, because 70% of the knives are foreign knives that come into this country, and that only leaves 30% of the market for an American company to try to make a profit. So anyhow, that's the up-to-date information. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative, and we'll see you in the next video.